Hey Keith.
What's
Welcome
up,
to
bro?
early days.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I spent my whole life chasing you. When will you come home to me?
Dude, thanks for coming on. Um yeah, I want to talk about the I mean you're building Branta right now and it's it's moving fast, I would say. What what I want to know is like what was it like making the shift from where you used to work at? I'll let you explain that part, but to now doing your own Bitcoin company.
Yeah, man. I mean, the shortest answer is it was just compressing the learning timeline by like 10x, 100x. You try and start something in Bitcoin, you learn a lot real quick, or you just quit.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, well, so previously, for anybody listening, I worked at Bloomberg, New York City, London a bit, DC as well. Big successful company in fiat, but a lot of complexity. If there's a lot of complexity, you kind of know you're getting famoosed. Something else is going on, right? Bitcoin's hard, but it's super simple. And so at some point I found Bitcoin and I said, hey, yeah, this is it. This makes a lot more sense. Let me devote everything I have to this. So I tried to start Branta. Initially, we had a couple products that were quite experimental. I think they were pushing the envelope, very interesting. And we landed on one more recently that is, I think, going to have a quite good impact. And we've already had good traction with. It's called Guardrail.
Interesting. Well, we'll get into that in a second. So talk to me about the Bloomberg days. What was it like? Just like sitting on the sidelines, seeing all this building happening. Were you plotting out like, oh, I'm gonna do this, then I'm gonna do this, or like, man, there's this huge gap and no one's hitting it, or like what was it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever directly came at anything like from the genius approach. It was more just at Bloomberg day to day, you're iterating, you're working with a team. Everybody's really smart, but it is very iterative. There's no big leaps, there's no quantum leaps. Obviously, like there's a direct business connection and clients rely on the Bloomberg terminal. So, uh, no bashing the product, very cool product. But I think if you're the type of person who wants to kind of lash out a bit and get creative and deliver something totally new, you're always dreaming a little bit, right? You're like that boy back in middle school, just sitting, looking out the window, kind of picturing utopia or something like that. So I felt that a lot for sure. And I was just like, man, when's Bitcoin going to hit 1 million? And it just wasn't cranking up fast enough. And then it really dawned on me, like, if not us, who? So I just kept feeling pulled to get out there and build and, yeah, connect with more Bitcoiners, more builders in the space.
Did you know at the time like what you were gonna build, or were you?
No, what I knew is I didn't want to lose my Bitcoin. That was like the one risk, right? Like discover perfect money, but you need to not lose that. So that was like my only vague idea starting out.
So not to lose the Bitcoin?
Yeah, just don't lose it.
Yeah. So when I first got I first heard of you, you were building something entirely different. Can you explain to the audience what that was and yeah, and how it's progressed?
Yeah, of course. I still love our first product. I really, really love it. I love the idea. Um, we didn't really have a name for it, so I'll just refer to it as like Bronta's classic offering. And the idea here was to make sure that people could never download fake software onto their computer. And so what this was a on-device software for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And in real time, we would do like a deep PGP, a deep SHA-256 of your wallets that you were running, right? So like if you go to install Sparrow, all that is a bunch of data on your computer. So there's in computer science, there's code that's executable, and then there's data that's just stored. But it's all just ones and zeros, and you can actually run SHA-256 over that to get a hash out. And if at any point that hash changes, you know your wallet's been tampered with. This was something useful for Bitcoiners, right? Like if your wallet's getting kind of changed while it's sitting on your hard disk, that's bad. And the other feature that ties right into that is the ability to make sure that your wallet's authentic in the first place. So this is kind of a vector that I thought a lot of people overlooked, right? Maybe people buy a Trezor, they get some of their Bitcoin and they want to get set up. But if people don't go on the command line and do a manual PGP for Trezor Suite in this case, you could be running fake software that's really bad. And yeah, I think our approach was very cool. I think executing on that there's a lot of surface area to touch. I think attaching a business model to that is very tricky because there's trust. And like, do you go for open source funding? Do you ask for payment? So that was kind of our first endeavor that we looked at, and all the code's archived on GitHub. So please take it, run with it if you're listening to this.
Yeah, so let's talk about that business model approach to something that I guess like in the early stages of building a company, you're going to be skating towards dead ends most of the time, and that's normal. That's where you should be skating to. But at some point, you want to hit on something that's going to lead you to multiple roads, or at least what you see as multiple places that could lead you either upstream or downstream to where the market's going. So can you describe what it was once I don't know if you fully have that yet, but where you are now?
Yeah, so I guess we're kind of pivoting to what Branta's working on today and our offering, really, that we're just starting to share around. And our first client's been on board for a month, but we're calling it Guardrail. So I love the term you use, skating towards a dead end. That's kind of how we felt with Branta Classic. It's like, yeah, we've kind of proved out this model. People can install the app, but there's annoying things like monetization, hitting all the surface area, staying up to date, etc. So yeah, we felt like we hit a dead end there. Very thankful we did. Learned a ton. Got to know some really smart people. And in that process, I learned what I was really trying to solve for was not dealing with anything fake, including invoices or payment requests, right? So wallet software is kind of solved. I think Branta is useful, but what we pivoted towards, and essentially we killed the Branta Classic, what we moved towards was, let's call it a guardrail. And Guardrail is meant to make sure that you never send a payment anywhere where you don't intend to. So the story that I like to tell is this. At some point, Alan Turing invents computers. At some point, Steve Jobs comes along. Steve Jobs invents really nice interfaces for computers. Later on, the US military invents the internet. After that, consumer applications come, and finally, Satoshi shows us Bitcoin. So, okay, right, we've got computers, we've got devices, they're all connected, and now you have Bitcoin. And it turns out Bitcoin's perfect money. Okay, secrets out of the bag. Everybody knows Bitcoin's perfect money. And what's happened since then has been nothing short of phenomenal. Over $1 trillion market cap, and the adoption's been great, right? Many, many businesses are built on Bitcoin. And I see an issue, though. I see a big, big issue going forward, and it's that I can't easily verify Bitcoin addresses or Lightning addresses when they're shown to me. And so using the Michael Jordan meme, I took that personally. I took it very personally, right? So here we build perfect money, we build all these amazing businesses, and then we tell all of our loved ones, hey, check out this thing, it's amazing. Okay, then your dear mom is using Bitcoin, but she cannot verify a vault address before depositing. And so I took it upon myself to fix that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's dive into the guardrail stuff, because I have multiple questions here. What is a way? Give me an example of when you would use that for Lightning, and then when you would use that for Bitcoin, and just pretend this is somebody who's never used Bitcoin before, or Lightning.
Yeah, for sure. So let's use the Bitcoin example first. And let's say you're a first-time Bitcoin investor. you've been working for a decade or two, you have some cash to throw around, and you don't want to mess around with $100. You want to do $1,000. You want to buy $1,000 of Bitcoin, and you want to put it into a 2 of 3 vault after you read for 10 hours on how these are so great. So where Branta comes in is any business providing a 2 of 3 vault is going to show you an address where you're going to deposit your Bitcoin to, right? And so this person probably bought their Bitcoin on some American KYC exchange, and then they want to move it into cold storage. And at that process, there's a single point of failure that I am paranoid about. And it's basically that, hey, I'm relying on a web browser, maybe it's Chrome, to show me this address, the characters correctly. And as long as that's good, okay, the Bitcoin goes in my vault. But if you have a bad browser extension, it doesn't. And so Guardrail lets users click a little button that says verify with Branta, and it links out and guarantees that the address is correct for the user. So when you
so that way you're copy and pasting from the address. And can you explain to people, like, it's going to be, and we're talking about like a lot of characters here, right? And typically the rule of thumb is to verify the beginning and the end, and that's how you're supposed to know, right?
Yeah. A lot of wallet interfaces just show the first 8 and the last 8 of maybe a 30 plus character string, which it's okay, but it's not perfect.
Yeah. So, and then now describe the Lightning side to that.
Yeah, so Lightning is, so for background, Lightning is kind of an emerging network that is super fast, but generally you don't hold your keys to. And so Lightning is really, really good for fast final payments. Same thing basically applies, right? So let's say somebody has a shopping cart online with a commerce platform, and they're buying $1,000 worth of holiday presents for their family. And they want to go pay in Lightning because that saves the 3% credit card fee, and it can be more privacy protecting. When I go to checkout in Lightning, generally I'll be shown from the merchant a Bolt 11 invoice that has a very long alphanumeric. It starts with LNBC, and this is hundreds of characters. And I'll also be shown a QR code that represents that string. Now, before going to pay $1,000, it would be nice if I could double check that I'm not getting scammed, man in the middle, phished, or some sort of front end attack. Just some quick check, because once you send that Bitcoin or that Lightning, you can't get that back. There's nobody to call. And so with Branta, you can quickly scan or click the verify Branta link and just see, hey, yeah, this invoice matches the merchant, go ahead, 0 friction, it takes 1 second, and then you go on your way and everybody wins.
Gotcha. So that all makes sense. That all sounds about right. Now let's talk about the business side of it. So how are you looking through as far as where Branta is going to make money doing this? Is it going to be just through the offering itself to like the different businesses? Or are you thinking through more of like a direct to customer type of a approach? Like, I mean, you don't have to give out too much away, but just were you thinking through all this stuff, or how are you thinking through all this stuff?
Yeah, for sure. We've thought through it a lot. And so kind of the service that Branta offers really makes sense for other businesses to come in and just enable all their customers to verify invoices. Now, what that means is the business can pay Branta, and the business can verify and kind of register every checkout with Branta. All the privacy is protected. We end up purging all the addresses after. But this is really a win-win, because for the business gets nice protections against sort of cyber attacks, general phishing campaigns, man in the middle, and the customer associates that brand trust with the business, as well as has the ability to verify that their computer is not being hacked. So yeah, the business model is that platforms can choose to adopt Branta and then offer that to all of their customers at once. And the end users don't have any friction of installing apps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you see different tiers with that? Are you thinking more of a like an all-encompassing package? Like what sort of like, or suite, or like what are you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for now, it's kind of a binary thing. It's like if you come on Branta, you can just decide to register every every checkout with Branta, and that's that. It's pretty simple in that way.
And are you seeing any traction, any kind of feedback already from the clients that you do have?
Yeah,
What's that sort of like? How's that going?
yeah, for sure. The feedback's been very good. So when we set out to kind of solve this problem, um, one of our main tenets was like, we don't want to compete. We really just want to try and add value to Bitcoin as medium of exchange, right? So Bitcoin's going from store of value to medium of exchange, and then finally we'll hit unit of account once the market cap grows and the other fiats die. But we're still at medium of exchange. And so the feedback that we've gotten has been very good. It's been, oh, this is very interesting. Tell us more. That's been a lot of the conversations. Our first clients processed over 1,000 Bolt 11. And yeah, I think everybody likes it. I really do think there's no downside to this model. And we actually have some very cool plans that I won't share quite yet, but some cool slight tweaks to this offering that are going to make it even better.
Do you see the other stuff that I guess Lightspark's doing, the UMA stuff, and yeah, and we're kind of hearing more and more people are, I don't know if they're like paying people to use it or however they're getting customers, but uh, what is your approach to handling like a bigger fish like that? Because I would imagine at some point they will have the same uh, option available at some point. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you'll have to actually enlighten me. I haven't looked at Lightspark. Could you share
Yeah,
them?
so they're doing this thing called UMA where it's like it's going to be like a registry type of Lightning address, and it's full like KYC. It's pretty egregious if you ask me. But I'm just a pleb.
Yeah,
How are you how are you thinking? Are you seeing yourself as just a different? I mean, you haven't heard about it yet, but how are you gonna face competition like that? That's out there trying to get the Ubers of the world, and they're gonna go after a totally different ecosystem.
yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I haven't looked at Lightspark, but in terms of kind of building a centralized registry, um, this is always interesting because Bitcoin's decentralized, right? And so like these two kind of theories clash. They generally clash, right?
Yeah,
Well,
explain why that is.
yeah, well, so most Bitcoin founders and most Bitcoiners are in Bitcoin because they don't have to trust, they can verify, right? And so with that, using Bitcoin and Lightning, the whole value is its P2P cash. Like that's what we want to achieve. And so going to a centralized registry, I think, can cause pain points. Obviously, there's KYC, there's all that stuff. I think Bronta's finding a very happy balance of like, yes, we're a second touch point. You can quickly check us and go on your way. But we're not some sort of lookup. We're not like a Rolodex or a phone book necessarily. And so depending on what the platform wants when onboarding, we don't even show like identifiable data for the customer and absolutely minimal for the platform. So in that way, I feel that Branta is very compatible with the decentralized peer-to-peer cash aspect. I can't really talk to Lightspark without looking at that more.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that makes sense. It sounds like you guys are taking a more kind of Bitcoin ethos approach to
100%.
verifying everything on the technical side and the back end. Cool. Yeah, because it kind of gets scary, right? Like the more and more Bitcoin becomes this mainstream thing, which I would argue that it is at this point. People are going to find ways to carve out their middlemen takeaway from it, and unfortunately, that's just really hard to do. And I know it's really hard to do that in Bitcoin outside of exchanges and mining and stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, let's switch gears. Let's talk about you, Keith. Keith, what makes you a good entrepreneur? What makes you a good Bitcoin entrepreneur?
Oh man, I've never been asked that before. Am I a good Bitcoin entrepreneur? I don't know.
No, but what sort of readings? What sort of takeaways? What do you look at? What are some of your principles? What are some of your
Yeah.
guiding lights? Like what is it that led? I know what gets me out of bed every morning. I know what type of impact I'm going after. I mean, we're all money driven to a certain extent, right? Some more than others. We're all capitalists.
Yeah.
What gets you out of bed to go and do what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say why I'm good. I can definitely sit here and tell you where I'm coming from is, yeah, the world has a problem and it's called, we can just call it bad money for now. That's the problem, right? Bitcoin's the solution. And so, when I read the Bitcoin standard by Safe, that was it. That was the before and after. And so once I saw that, to me, it was like, look, all hands on deck. I'll help however I can. I felt like I had some creative and unique ideas that people hadn't really talked about and brought to the industry in a product. So I feel like failing fast and really putting yourself out there is good. So one of my big focuses this year is a little more longer form writing on kind of the problem that I see and how I want to use P2P digital cash, right? Because that's just a beautiful future. So, I mean, I feel fundamentally aligned with the Bitcoin Max ethos. I think it's, I haven't seen it be disproven yet, right? Like Bitcoin appears to be decentralized, secure. People can hold their own keys. Nostrs being overlaid, or maybe not overlaid, but Nostrs being built out as well. So I think this is the direction things are going. I think institutions are failing anyways. Parker Lewis always says you want to kind of have a separate rail for your business, for cash flow, for payroll, and building these things ahead of time. It's like you have the opportunity to prevent a lot of pain later down the road if you prep ahead of time. And so I think building these tools and giving them to people and talking about them and, getting these in customers' hands is really, really valuable. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on it.
Do you think it was the way you were brought up? Like, do you think it was something that you were ingrained in it?
Yeah, I
in
mean,
your
my
kid?
parents were hippies. Like we grew up in a very small town. My parents are kind of naturalists by nature, quite rebellious by nature as well. And yeah, like absolutely. The reason I wanted to program and the reason I like technology is because the government cannot tell me what code to write or not to write. Maybe they'll throw me in jail if I write Tornado Cash. I mean, I think the guy's name is Aaron Schwartz. They ended up killing basically. Like Ross is in jail, sure. But like most people who write code can write whatever code they want. They can use a NIM and the government can't stop them. So yeah, like a lot of rebellious nature. I really seek dense value. And I think, nature is very beautiful. And I think Bitcoin very much mirrors that. My only regret is not studying money earlier.
Do you think you would have? Do you think you would have? Obviously, you would have got in earlier, but do you think you would have started coding earlier? Do you think that maybe that would have changed things a little bit?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I was playing with code in high school. Nothing super elite or complex, but I always liked code. It's just math, and
Okay,
math's very axiomatic. And I felt like math is open source, right? Like truth is open source. You can't close source truth. So yeah,
that's a
I
great
mean,
statement. Yeah,
it's just out there. You just have to reach out and touch it.
yeah, that's true. What was it about your parents? Like, what did you don't mind me asking? What did they do growing up? Like,
Yeah, so I had family members who studied computer science and were like quite successful in that regard. My dad did engineering at IBM, he graduated from RIT, worked for a couple tech companies. A lot of my mom's career was teaching literacy. So, nothing too out of the norm, but yeah, I always felt very supported in learning and trying new things. And I've always been that way. So, I think some people are built to kind of go out on a limb, throw stuff out there, see what sticks. Other people are really good at executing, and some people are somewhere in the middle. So, in life, you have to oscillate a bit. Maybe you work a job, you work a 9 to 5 for 3-4 years, build a little wealth, and you spend a year burning it down. It's like a forest fire. Forest grows, the forest burns. You rinse and repeat, you get better each time. You learn a lot about truth. And yeah, you have to give more than you take, right? So that's how I think about it.
do they know that you're building on Bitcoin now, or
Oh,
do they just kind of? Oh, they do.
oh,
What do they say about it?
I don't talk to my family a ton about like the technical like nuances of what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, I mean the general reception is that like, hey Keith, like we're not nerds like you're a nerd, but I can see that your goal is to help people not lose their money. That's a benevolent end. That's a benevolent goal, right?
Right. And then you're obviously passionate about it, so they probably see that. And I mean, when can you ever go wrong with passion, with what you're building, entrepreneur-wise at least? That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's dive into the Sparrow stuff because I can tell you're a real big fan of Craig and what he's built. Can you talk about your love for that? I don't want to call it a product, but for that open source project.
For Sparrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think about this a lot. So probably most people here know what sparrow is. I love the word sparrow. So actually, Branta is also a type of bird. Branta is a species of goose. It's the Canadian goose. And there's association with flight and freedom and lightness, right? So there's a lot of emotion attached to the name sparrow and kind of Branta as well. And, when naming Branta, I kind of wanted to troll swan and river a little bit. So I wanted to poke fun at them. It's not too obvious, but I also wanted to associate with Sparrow a bit, and I like the name. And people know what Sparrow is. If you don't, Sparrow's a transaction coordinator in a watch-only wallet. So yeah, you can sign transactions, you can do multi-sig, a bunch of other fancy stuff. And it's basically a database that gets stored on your local computer. You can connect it to a node that you run or a public node, depending on your level of sophistication. And yeah, the word that most people would use is that Sparrow is a wallet. And so I think about wallets a lot. I think there's obviously different use cases for wallets. I don't think we've really seen any like broad business models attached to wallets. It does seem like the open source model is dominant. And I've been toying with the theory that wallets will converge on a winner take all. Right. And so Sparrow is built on Java, and then it uses USB drivers and other dependencies. And you can see it on GitHub. You can rebuild this. You can do PGP like checksums against Sparrow. And it does seem like Sparrow may be the winner take all wallet. So like if you're a Trezor or if you're a Ledger or these other commercial wallets that produce physical devices, we should call these signing devices. These companies, Trezor and Ledger, build their own apps, I guess. They're kind of a wallet. They can also coordinate transactions, but really like Sparrow kind of outdoes them. And Sparrow works with all most signing devices. And, you can look at the code. Craig's not making any money. Craig takes money from basically other people in the open source ecosystem through things like open source funding. So yeah, I mean, Sparrow's great. And, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's what I think about it.
No, it's fascinating. You can tell that you have a real love for it. Have you contributed at all to Sparrow? I don't know if I've ever asked you that before.
We thought about forking Sparrow into Branta for an integration with Branta Core. I've talked with Craig a number of times. Great guy. But let the code speak for itself. Craig's a human. Humans die. God bless Craig. But I think the point of Bitcoin, of Branta, of Sparrow, of all these things we put our energy into is that hopefully these are structures that outlive us as mortals, right?
Yeah. Do you think Branta, especially with guardrails and some of these other innovations that you'll come out with later, do you think you'll ever have obviously you have the suite on the desktop that's free and open source. Do you think there will be other things that are free and open source coming out of Branta? I mean, that's always a hard line, like with companies, because you want to, let's dive into that. Like, how do you feel about the free and open source side, and then how do you distinguish between what's commercial and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So, I mean, like, quite frankly, I think to probably a lot of people either building companies in the space or wanting to build companies, it's a bit controversial, right? Because you've got guys walking around with hats that say open source everything. They're kind of anarchists. You've got guys going around and building completely closed source projects. And the truth is, both models exist and are going to continue existing. And the reason for that is that the marketplace is a battleground, and both can exist, and I think they always will exist. And I think some products are better suited for open source, and I think some products are better suited for centralized models. And anybody putting their entropy into a model is going to need some energy back generally to keep it going. So yeah, with Branta, like, I'll just speak about what we have. We have two products. We have Core and we have Guardrail. Branta Core is MIT. It's on GitHub. You can check it out. And it's a huge part of our equation, right? Like, we tie into the clipboard. We make sure you're not getting clipboard swap attacked, but we wanted to give it away. And the open source model fits that better because this is software you run on your computer that has certain permissions. And it's more intimate, right, for the user. Now, Guardrail, it's really an API integration in a website that people can interact with from any platform or wallet or checkout cart. And Guardrail is just a link that you load fundamentally in a web browser or in a phone. And so Guardrail is less intimate. You're not intruding the user's device. It's kind of a quick check and go sort of thing. And because of the nature of the API, this naturally fits closed source model, right? So businesses can integrate our API and basically share their checkout data with us in an anonymous, like a privacy preserving fashion. We show it to the user during a window and then we get rid of it forever. And that sort of model it feels right to have businesses exchange value for that, right? So, I don't like to attach ethics or morality to open source or for profit. Just being realistic, I think for profit's great. I think open source is great. I think both have their place, and it's really an art form to know when to use which.
Yeah, when to go to commercial versus free and open source. Yeah, I think for me, I definitely struggle with finding out that I gotta call it kind of like a slider. It's more like a slider because you're always going to go back and forth on that. And I think once it reaches a certain threshold of money spent, I think that's the way I look at it. So if it's something that it's something like you were talking about the API and stuff, like if that's something that you're going to be charged for continuously, and I would think at a certain point you got to start taking profit on it.
Yeah, totally. And I think, between businesses, if you're adding value and ultimately helping a business succeed more in their mission and kind of amplify their offering and put them on steroids, yeah, I think some compensation for that is a great trade, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk about, let's talk more about the sales sides of things. Obviously you worked at Bloomberg. Did you ever get into any of the sales stuff, the sales side of things? Like how do you manage your funnel, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that's a really tricky one. Like, just being frank, for any engineers kind of starting out and starting a company, you could almost say sales is like 90% of it, right? Like, it's funny because at the same time, product is 90% of it, execution is 90%, and sales, they're all 90% of it, right? So yeah, with sales, this has been a learning experience. I'm lucky to have a few guys in my network who are very helpful in just quickly bouncing ideas off of each other. I also learned by watching as well. So other founders in the space have these nice things set up, like funnels and warm leads, cold leads, reputation, outreach, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, what we're doing more specifically for Guardrail is it's a very intimate process, right? Like, if you own and operate a successful business, and you're already up and running, it's a risk. So I don't want to say it's a risk, but it's a risk to bring on a new company that adds value, right? Like, you want to see social proof, you want to see track record, you want to know why they're in business, what their future plans are, who else is doing business with them. And so it's a very, very intimate process that you can't really rush. And I just kind of look at it like you need to add more value than you take. What else? Like, there's only so many Bitcoin companies in the space. And I think ultimately people can and will tell, like, hey, like, what is this guy in it for? And so if you're trying to start something, probably one of the better things you can do is put content out there, go meet people in person, share your thoughts, share your drive, the problems that you see, the solution you're approaching, and kind of your future plans. Because without that, like, why would you do business with another business? And Bronta's such a nuanced problem. Like, the legacy that I hope to have is, like, I hope to illustrate kind of like a splintering wedge that could damage Bitcoin's ascent to hyper Bitcoinization. I hope to illuminate that, provide a solution in a good model, and then offer that to people so that Bitcoin can hyper Bitcoinize more quickly. If we do that, we're successful. And, that's kind of how I lead.
No, that's great advice. I mean, I feel like you do all those things. I feel like you do go out there in public. You do represent your values about what you're trying to build. You're honest, right? And I feel like that's always the first thing. Good vibes, right? And I know you're getting into writing this year. Do you find that going from, like you said, there's like 4 different things to this, right? There's the sales part of it, there's the coding side of it, there's the day-to-day stuff, day-to-day operations, and then you still have like this whole funnel that you got to create out of nothing, basically.
Yeah.
And then you still, I mean, maybe if you have time on the weekends or something, you get to hang out with your family. But so like when you're thinking through these different things, now that you're doing writing, you're working more about trying to get better at that, or at least start that process. How much time has it taken away from the other core asset, and just kind of talk about these things and just talk about why these things are all necessary at the same time?
Yeah. Well, it's a total, what's the game? Tetris? It's a Tetris puzzle, right? Like, what do you fit in what order? When I think about some of my favorite Bitcoin companies, they do a really good job articulating their mission and the exact value that they bring. And, starting out is a little bit more like whiplash, building Branta, like try this, try that, shoot out some tweets, make something provocative, see what people say, test the model, fail quick. I think where we are now is like, I'm actually very happy with the offering that we have for Guardrail V1. Like I said, there's V2, V3 we have in the works, but we really need to like show off V1 right now. That's what we need to do, right? First client's on. We've processed over 1,000 Bolt 11 invoices. That feels really good. But I really want to do more conveying on what this thing is, why we've built it. And, I think podcasts are great. Speaking is phenomenal. Being in person is also great. But something that really lasts and makes an impact is long form writing, or at least like blog writing. And so like, what's this thing called? The Nakamoto Institute. So that, other blog posts, even books, just generally on Bitcoin, I feel like make a very big impact. And these are things you can reference for years to come, right? So like if you write a very good piece, it may be that circulates and goes, I don't want to use the word viral as in like a clickbait, but that piece may get referenced many times. And like, ultimately that is the goal, right? Like you want to illuminate something, create the value, but then you have to show it off. So like at Branta, like, yeah, we're speaking to everybody, but a key part is that not every human needs to know Branta exists. We're not trying to slap our label on every website. There's no ego with this. The only ego is let's have people use Bitcoin successfully. And when platforms adopt Branta, they can show a link that says verify invoice. People can skim right over Branta. They don't need to know who I am. So when I do writing and what I'm working on, I'm kind of speaking to the other business owners and executives in the industry, quite frankly.
No, that makes total sense. You're trying to find your customers, your clients, future business opportunities. I think that's totally right. I think that's the total way of doing it. There's a great book called The Four Conversations by Blair Ennis. He talks a lot about that, where you have this thing. I think it's called like it's the initial you would initially call kind of the cold outreach, right? But in your sense, what you're describing is you've already created everything. So And that way that cold outreach actually gets reversed. And now it becomes they're cold outreaching to you personally. Like, I'm Carr from Pleb Lab reaching out to Keith from Branta wanting to use your product because I saw your blog post, these other things. Can you explain that process from going from there, me reaching out to you wanting to use your product to, and then becoming a client of Branta, customer of Branta, like how that plays out? Because I know you at this point you have to have some sort of step process.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So, I think I love the term like AD and BC in terms of like a turning point in the company, right? So maybe our turning point was a few months ago when we really landed on the model. Now, before that, like you said, I was reaching out to people. I was really seeking feedback, and thank you to everybody who, touched Bront along the way. And so initially, like when you don't quite have the offering and you're trying to carve out what is it exactly that will help these businesses and platforms, I was seeking advice. I was seeking feedback. It was a little bit iterative. And now that we've landed on what we think is a very good solution, it's more of a phase shift. And so now we're putting content out there that describes this. The pieces can be at different levels of depth, but the point is to show off the product, show off the approach, illuminate the problem, put that out there in some sort of long form writing where people can really, really think, right? And then get this in front of the right people. We think once that happens, why would a business not onboard with us? If all of your customers can all of a sudden go from not being able to double check if their computer's totally like insecure, not airtight. Like, what if you have a browser extension that's bad? Your customers can't even check that right now. You can set up a 2 of 3 multi-sig and spend hundreds of dollars on signing devices and fees and all this. But if you have like a last mile problem, your business, you're in trouble, right? And so these sorts of attacks are going to increase, and adopting Bronta's, it's quite seamless. It doesn't cost your customers anything. It just makes sense. It doesn't inhibit P2P. It does not affect privacy in an adverse way. And so for us, it's really, hey, let's show you what we have. Come on board. Let's talk. And at least tell us what your needs are, or tell us why you want to talk, and, take it from there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Are you looking into like white labeling it at some point, or are you thinking just more about keeping it where it's at
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, I mean, totally.
for the right price?
Why not?
That's awesome. All right, cool. I want to talk about just kind of this new. I feel like post 22. I don't know if it was 22, 23, but I feel like it's changed. It's different now, at least in the ecosystem, as far as like making revenue versus like, just going out and raising a bunch of money and then like living off of that, whatever that means. Can you talk about like why? Can you talk about, because I could talk about this for days, but I want to hear it from you, because I feel like you're doing it the old-fashioned way of how to build a business, which is the way I'm doing it too, which is the way a lot of people inside of Pleb Lab are building their businesses in Bitcoin. Opposed to, I'm not saying it's a wrong thing or the right thing, but it's a different thing. But I do see that as becoming the thing to do now. Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
And how that change has kind of happened? I don't know where that change came from, but maybe it was a crash of a sort.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you how I view it, and then
Yeah.
So just how I view it is like, look, I mean, I view myself as an artist and a fighter. Like, I like punching through and just getting really gritty and just trying, right? So I'm kind of like an attack all fronts at once sort of guy. And with that, there's something really raw that I find and really, really exciting. Like, you wanna wake up in the morning with a mission. Try not having a paycheck. Like, try
For
that.
real.
Try
For
that
real.
and putting your own thoughts and product on the line and making it work. Like that, there's no better motivation than that.
Gosh, that punches me right in the gut. But
Yeah, and
it's real though. It's real.
yeah, and like I think if you force yourself to really go down to the lowest level and add value for your first client and get them on, that's fantastic. Now, just in my experience, like so with Branta, we've taken some angel money from our network. That's always a good feeling, right? Like I don't want to disclose too much here.
Yeah, yeah. You
We took
don't.
some angel money and that's been great. We also, yeah, let me just leave that there.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
What else are you thinking about?
No, I was thinking about that, but I want it, but I don't count that as like, if anything, that's like break in case of emergency type of money, at least the way I see it. Um, but so talk about like, yeah, like not having a paycheck, waking up every morning, and then like having to go out and scour for food and like making it happen, and then be able still to end these kind of sales calls with a potential yes, right? Like talk about that. How real is that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard. I don't think most people are built for it. I mean, I think, look, I think 99.9% of people do not have the constitution for it. Just that's my opinion. Now, I do think that some people do. And if you do have that constitution, I don't think you can ignore it because I think you know you have it. And if you know you have it, it's your responsibility to use it. What are you going to do? Not use this gift? You have to use the gift. It's a divine mission, right? Like we got to have good money. It's got to work. It's going to work. And look, I mean, knock on wood here, but I've been fortunate. I have not been hacked. I've not lost Bitcoin. A lot of people have. So, one way I look at it is forfeiting a bit of salary, right, for a fiat mine. I'm lucky to be able to do that, but I also feel like I'm paying my dues to Bitcoin a bit, right? Like we're early, kind of. I don't know. There's a lot of people before us, but there's going to be a lot more after. And I don't mind paying some dues beforehand because just the experience of talking to some of the greats in the space who've been here for a decade, I'm such a fanboy of Bitcoin. I mean, that means the world to me. So I'm happy to contribute. I'm happy to forego some profit for a while. And, you really have to look deep. Do you believe in your thing or do you not? And
Yeah.
that's it.
No, it's exactly true. I mean, some of the advice I get from the OGs is always like, grind it out, car. Grind it out. It's like, really? That's your advice? Just grind it out? I always joke about it because I think it's hilarious. It's like such a great way to give somebody either like confidence or not confidence. Grind it out. Like, but when you hear them say that and you see where they are now, you're like, oh. And then after a while, you start realizing, oh, like, oh, they did this too. Like, they had to go through that too. Like,
Yeah.
and that's why they're on the other side. That's what they mean.
Yeah.
It's not like they're not like they're saying it just because they want to be a jerk. They're saying it because like, no, we went through the exact same thing you did, and we didn't get till the other side till like year 4, year 5, or whatever it was for them. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying about paying your dues. It definitely does feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, man. There's nothing wrong too with fiat mining, quite frankly. Like it's a great path. If you figure out Bitcoin and you can fiat mine, stack corn, that's awesome too.
Yeah, I also too feel like you're I guess you're in year 2 of you building your business. So like and when you put that against like long term, like what does Keith look like 5-7 years from now? He looks like an absolute stud, right? Like
Yeah.
doing brown. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you just got to take a really low time reference to what you're doing.
Yeah, man, you got to fail early. I mean, I feel like this is something I'm going to insult you by saying this, but I feel like you do this really well, not failing early, but compressing the timeline, right? Like think 10 years out, where are you going to be, Car? You're going to be just flying high.
And I want to be helping people like you
Yeah.
in the early stages. Like I realized that in 23, like what I loved about Pleb Lab and when I did it. And it was actually just helping companies in the early stages. Because once companies get to like the seed and beyond, like to me, it's not nearly as interesting for me. But like in the pre-seed and like the angel stage, like the early stages, like the early days, to me, that's like the fun time. Because that's when they find out the form, like what it's going to be, like usually a road they're going down. It's still in the like kind of incubation stage.
Yeah, man. Like, explosive creativity in the early stages, just like vivid dreams, waking up at 2 a.m., pacing around.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're coming to the top of the hour, but like, have you actually sat down and like thought about, you've talked about it a lot on this pod, which I love because you're talking about who you are and like what makes you motivated to do Branta, but have you thought about like what it's going to look like in like 2 to 3 years? I mean, obviously you're not like, yelling it to the clouds and everything and to everybody who wants to hear it because you're humble. But like, do you have that somewhere written down? Do you think about it? Like, do you have that vision for Brenta?
Yeah, I think about it every day. I mean, look, the vision is anytime I see a payment, Bolt 11, Bolt 12, SegWit, legacy Bitcoin address, give me a way to see who's on the other side, please. Please give me that. And then I think medium of exchange is in a good place. I think that's what we have to do, right? We're not tackling custody. That's the vision. I think Bront is going to continue this crazy sort of hybrid model of like, yeah, we're centralized, but we're actually going to decentralize a bit again in the next, on our roadmap. And I think we're going to mesh super well. We already do with P2P digital cash. So, we have a really good window right now. We can fix the money.
Nice. And where can people reach out to Keith to get all this information?
Yeah, I mean, find us on Nostr, Branta, Twitter's centralized social media. You can find us there. Our website's branta.pro.
And they can just they can potentially get onboarded.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we'd love to talk. We're talking to as many people as we can right now.
Cool. Yeah. Bullish, man.
Appreciate that.
What
Bullish
do you
bullish on Pleb Lab.
Oh man. Me too.
Bullish on everybody
What?
in the lab.
Yeah. We got a lot of killers here, man.
Yeah.
So one thing, like, we try not to. Like, I don't want mediocre. I only want great. If you're doing something mediocre, go somewhere else. It's kind of how I feel.
Get out.
Seriously, life's too short to do mediocrity.
Yeah, I hear it.
And like, I think if you come in with that kind of attitude, you're only gonna get better. And I think you have that attitude with Branta. Like you were saying it earlier with like, no, I want this. I want to do this. Like you have to have that kind of drive to build on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, we killed Branta V1. It was a bit violent, but Branta V2 Guardrail is so much better. I couldn't be happier.